OK, Ed, so Nigel last week sat here, said about immigration. Yeah, and basically, you know, I think lots of things that resonated with people at home. He said, you know, we need to control not the amount of people coming in, but are they coming in ready to work with qualifications, without severe criminal records and without major diseases. When he says it like that, you can't really argue with it. If you're Prime Minister, how are you going to change or solve this immigration crisis?
Well, I don't agree with Nigel, because my starting point is immigration is of benefit to the country. And, you know, I'm the son of immigrant parents, and I believe they've made a contribution to this country. I believe lots and lots of people who come into this country make a huge contribution. And I think we've got to recognise that as our starting point. Now, however, I also have changed Labour's approach on immigration, because I think people's anxieties are not based on prejudice, they're based on real anxiety. And I think we've got to address the real anxieties, and that is the way that we make the vision of a diverse Britain, which we are, and which I celebrate, work. And what's that about? That's about the undercutting of wages. So when people come into the country, aren't paid the minimum wage, people say, well, hang on a minute, somebody's being paid less than the minimum wage, that means my wages are being driven down. Or people say, well, I think people should learn English when they come here, particularly if they're in public-facing jobs. Or people say, I think you should contribute before you can claim benefits. Now, that's our approach on this. The last thing I'd say on this, in this area of all others, we've talked about cynicism about politics. You shouldn't make promises you can't keep, or promises that you think aren't right. I don't want us to leave the European Union like Nigel, because I think it would be bad for the country. And I'm not going to make promises like David Cameron that says we can reduce immigration to the tens of thousands, which he did at the last election, when he had not a clue how he'd do it. So I think, you know, in this area, set out what you can do, and let's make the vision of a Britain that is diverse work for everybody.
OK, so let us know if you agree with Ed's policies and what you're about to hear. Tweet at Bite the Ballot using the hashtag YesEd if you agree, and hashtag NoEd if you don't, and we'll bring the results shortly. Yes.
Are people's anxieties not also partly based on a fear of non-UK nationals promoted by the anti-terrorism legislation of 2001 that allowed people to be held without trial for 3 years in immigration detention, such as Belmarsh Prison?
I don't think that's what people's anxieties about immigration are based on. I honestly don't. And I think it's really important, this. Look, you know, previously people thought the Labour Party was saying that when they were saying, I'm worried about immigration, that it's like prejudice. I think the vast, vast majority of people who are worried about immigration are not prejudiced. They're saying, my community's changed really fast. I'm worried about what's happening to wages. It's a real issue, this. It's a real issue that people say, if an employer can get somebody at less than the minimum wage, what's it going to do to my wage if I'm in that same occupation? Or if they're just advertising, we had this thing recently, a major company was just advertising abroad and not offering the opportunities to young people. So this is why I say you've got to put in place the right measures to make the vision work. I honestly don't think it's based on those things.
But I think we at least have to accept that there is a racial tinge to some of these things that people are saying. And I think that that's a racial tinge that's promoted by, I don't know, the last 10 years, a lot of language of non-UK nationals and kind of the
right that we do that. But I think I don't think it's right to associate everybody who's got a concern with immigration, or even the vast majority, with those tendencies. I don't think they are the same tendencies.
Becky.
Hello, I have a question, or two questions. You've said in the past that Labour messed up its immigration policies when you were last in power. How can we be sure that they're corrected now? And the second thing is, also, what do your plans mean for us, for example? Will our fingerprints be checked if we leave the country? OK, let me
deal with both of those.
Cool, yeah, there's two there.
On the issue, on the issue of the Labour government's record, I've taken this view since I became leader of the opposition. You should say when you got something wrong. Now, we underestimated quite significantly the impact of Polish immigration. If we'd known then what we know now, we'd have done it over a much longer transitional period. That's why we've changed our policy. That's why we've said we want longer transitional controls when new countries enter the European Union. So how do they know, how do people know that we've learnt our lessons? Because we have. Secondly, I do think we should count people in and out. Now, there's different ways of doing it, but I do think we should count people in and out. One of the things people want is a sense of control, that when people enter and when people exit the country, we know how many people are coming in. What's the reason for that? It's not about the sort of surveillance state or anything which Miles was asking about earlier on. It's about knowing what's the pressure going to be on resources, how many people are actually coming in. Let's stop illegal immigration happening. So, look, I think you can do this in a way that actually has proper entry and exit checks so you know who's coming into your country.
Thank you.
Is it just one massive bouncer with one of those? Sorry, this is from English Dan, who I don't believe is a fan, from the hundreds of tweets I've got from him. Is it racist to discriminate against our non-EU cousins in favour of our EU brothers? Please, please ask. So
I think what Dan is referring to is that it's a sort of been a situation where if you're from outside the EU, you can't, for example, get access to benefits straight away, but when you're in the EU, you can. Now, personally, that's why one of the reasons why we're changing that to say you should contribute before you claim. So you've got a 2-year waiting period, if you like, before you get benefits. That's what we're going to argue for. That's what we want to change. I think that's fair, and I think that's the right thing to do.
how do you change that image that some people have? I was sitting next to someone at work who said, oh, I'm fed up of the influx of immigrants coming here and living off benefits, which we know statistically is nonsense.
I think,
but a lot of people believe that.
I think here's the reality about this. I think some of it is about the cost, but a lot more of it is about the sense of fairness. People want a sense, it's actually true more generally about our benefit system. People want a sense that it's about, you know, contribution. That was the original concept, actually, when William Beveridge designed the welfare state, was this idea of contribution, that you should contribute before you claim, or you should, you know, that it's, if you like, you put in and you get out. And I think it's important to do that in relation to EU people coming in.
Guys, just bring in an online question. We've got one ready. Should come up on our screen now. OK, GreenAds87. Ed, why do you pander to UKIP on immigration? Do you pander?
No. No. It's a simple answer. You know, when I stood for the Labour leadership, in the first speech I gave, I talked about immigration. I talked about it being a significant issue for us. And, you know, I passionately believe in the vision of Britain, of a diverse country. If you think about the London Olympics, we sold that vision of diversity to the world, and the world loved that vision. But you've got to work at that vision. You've got to make that vision work. If you just say, well, anybody who's concerned about immigration is somehow a racist or prejudiced, you're not going to make that vision work. You're going to have lots of people like Nigel saying, let's get out of the European Union, let's close our borders. I don't think we should do either of those things.
Are they playing on fear, then? Are they playing on people's fears?
I think they're playing on people's anxieties. Yeah, I think they've got the wrong solutions. Look, just think about this European Union question. It'd be a disaster for us to get out of the European Union. But the way you convince people of that is not by saying, well, anybody who's concerned about immigration is somehow prejudiced.
OK. OK. Yes. Jermaine. Oh, hey. It's warm.
I would like to ask, what... Oh, God, I forgot my question.
Jermaine.
Oh, no, I forgot my question. No. What are you going to do to promote the benefits of immigration rather than have Nigel Farage going around the country promoting the drawbacks of immigration and having immigration in the areas that are popular where there's least immigration?
I think you've got to talk about it in the way that I've talked about it, Jermaine. I think you've got to talk about it as benefiting the country, but also talk about the ways in which we can make it work. We can have the kind of control that will make people think it's going to work for the country, and you understand my concerns. I think people aren't unreasonable. They just want to know, do you get my concerns? Do you get that it's changing this community and it's having effects on my life?
Mm-hmm. OK, quick comment from Lucy, and then we'll try and move on so you can have some general comments as well.
Wonderful. I have a quick question. So we talk a lot about immigration, but we never talk about asylum seekers. What is your policy on asylum seekers? Well,
look, as a child of refugees, I think it's incredibly important. My parents both fled from the Nazis. My dad in 1940, my mum after the war, came here after the war. I think it's incredibly important that we are a place that, you know, has a home for people who are refugees fleeing from persecution.
reservedness around immigration is down to a lack of awareness of the benefits. How would you actually spread that message about what immigration contributes to the country and to our society?
I think it's what I said to Jermaine, Jimmy. I think it's about saying, it's about when I talk about this issue, I always try and do it in what I hope is a balanced way, which is to talk about the benefits and you know, be honest about my background and say that, look, that is a benefit to the country. And you know, the more you can explain the history and the benefits that we've had as a country, the better, I think.
OK, thanks, guys. So, look, let's go to the vote resolve on the public's views on Ed's immigration policies. They're coming in. 51% yes, Ed.
Better than last time.
Yeah, we nudged up just on the last one. OK, so Leaders Live is about you, our online audience. Let's take a look at some of the questions and comments you've been sending in. Luke Lefty, it's very disappointing to see Ed supporting mass snooping. OK. Derek 60DF, would a Labour government renationalise our railways and make it a service fit for purpose? And Harriet Bradley, OK, we've had over 1,000 rapists are convicted off of 95,000 reported cases. What's your plan to tackle that? Can you squeeze in those last two there, then? So nationalising the railways and then the cases of the rape there?
So the answer to the first question is, yes, we do want more of a public sector role in our railways. People may know that East Coast has been run in public hands. I think it's been done well. The government, out of dogma, is privatising it. We think it's wrong, and we're campaigning against it. I think it's got to be value for money, but I think the public sector can play more of a role. And on the second question, that is a really important question. You know, we've got to make sure that more rapists are brought to justice. That is about everything from the police to promoting women's ability to come forward. And making it possible for them to be, if you like, taken seriously when they come forward. I think it's a huge issue. We had a whole task force looking at this, has a whole series of recommendations for people who are interested, and you can find it on our website.
But then how do those recommendations become law so that stats like that don't get any worse?
I think it's partly about raising the importance of it as a government and making sure it is a top priority. And it is something that we made a priority of in government, and it's something we'd make a priority of again if we were in government.
And I think so. Some of a variety of the issues you've heard today really can be traced back to the people's role in it. You know, placing emphasis on mental health in schools, even things like sex and relationship education can cover cases like rape, so that it becomes normal for people to talk about it in a safe environment. I think obviously education's the one we're going to be hammering on everyone's door for the next election. Guys, any other comments off topic? I know Jazz is going to babble. Yes, please.
Hi, I've got quite a few followers from all over the UK, and to touch upon what has been mentioned earlier with the Scottish independence vote, and I think a lot of that came from kind of feelings that everything is very London-centric when it comes to politics. And as you said, with the girl looking for the internship, she would have to move to London. Like, everything is kind of based here as a hub. Have you got any kind of policies or ideas in place in order to try and balance it out a bit around the country? Because I do think people feel disenfranchised because it's Westminster and they only see the bubble of London and the banks, and they don't see anything else.
I agree. And we've got to give a lot more power to English towns and cities. We've done it in Scotland, we've done it in Wales, but we've got to do it in England. And we've got, I'll just give you a very practical example, which is about local bus services. I'm an MP in Doncaster. What's one of the biggest frustrations of my constituents?
Lou, you had one?
Yeah.
Quick.
So what would your policies be for tuition fees at university? Would you raise them, lower them, or completely abolish them?
That's a popular one, getting a few nods. Kenny, you got a quick one?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, what's Labour's policy in regards to reducing the referendum rate, which is costing us almost 13 billion every year?
OK, so we've got a variety there. Right?
OK, so let me go. I think that is a real issue, and it's something we've got to look at. We've got to look at the ways in which we can make it happen. Because
all blood gets screened anyway.
Okay.
So, like, why am I banned from doing something that?
Well, I'll take it away and come back
to
to you with a good answer.
Thank you.
It's a good question. Tuition fees. I want to lower the tuition fee. I'm quite sort of. I'll learn from the Nick Clegg experience. Let's put it that way. Yeah. I'm very keen to make a promise that I can keep. We will set out a policy in our manifesto.
Will it have an amount?
Yes, it will. We've got to make sure that it's a costed and credible promise. So we're taking particular care about this issue because, as I say, I think many people feel let down by what Nick Clegg did, and you know, we're not going to make that mistake. And then on reducing. What's the single? Let me ask you this question, Kenny. What's the single thing that you think would make the biggest difference to reoffending?
A big difference. So actually funding to actually prevent people going to prison in the first place, particularly groups which are overrepresented. For example, black and minor ethnics, people in care. What would the Labour Party actually do to tackle that?
I actually think you're right about this.
More people of my colour in prison, in terms of representation, than in the actual country. So what would you do to tackle that?
I think that the causes of crime, tackling the causes of crime, you've got to be tough on when people commit a criminal offence, but you've also got to tackle the causes. And we would do that. Look, I think it's about everything from youth services, local youth services. I know in my own constituency, they are incredibly important. I think it's work that the community can do. I think it's something else, which is giving people a sense of hope and aspiration, giving people a sense that this is what goes back to the big picture, if you like. Are we going to give people a sense, some of the people that you're talking about, that there's a legal way, there's a path which it doesn't involve crime, of them getting on in our society? And if you do that, I think that is the best way of cutting crime and indeed cutting reoffending.
So basically you're going to have to tackle all these issues we spoke about today in order for people to not live in that environment.
Definitely.
And what's your pledge in regards to cutting the rates? Because everyone says we're going to cut the number of people going to prison, but it keeps on increasing and increasing.
Look, we do want to drive those. We do want to drive those numbers down. I think people are sufficiently cynical about politics. I don't want to make you a promise that I'm not going to keep, but we do want to get those numbers down.
OK, guys, we are out of time. We could carry on going. If you've got more comments for Ed, please tweet him Ed_Miliband, where the conversation can continue.